Hello everyone, welcome to today's live. Today I'm going to be talking about weight loss and why, after always having our rules of what works for us, why at midlife suddenly we have this weight gain, often around the middle, that just will not budge. However much cardio we do, however much calorie restriction we do, all the things that used to work just don't work anymore. And why is that? So I see a lot of clients with these problems, especially with that central adiposity, that fat that suddenly you're losing your waist, your figure is changing, and as I say, it just won't shift. So there's three common roadblocks that I find I need to overcome with my clients need to overcome in order to bring about this weight loss. They are hormone imbalances, and I'll talk a bit more about what the key hormones are here at perimenopause. They are inflammation, and this is when I work a lot with food sensitivities with patients. So that inflammation is an issue. And also we look at neurochemicals or neurochemical imbalances. And these are the imbalances in the brain that cause us to overeat, emotionally eat. And they are largely down to the dopamine reward system. So these are three areas that I look at, and everyone is different. Today, you will all find kind of areas that fit more with you. And this is how I approach any kind of weight loss program with my patients, either through my cleanse program or through my 60-day reset. So why is this weight gain happening at perimenopause? So for a lot of patients, you suddenly get it. It comes out of nowhere. You're not doing anything different, but bam, there it is. And the reason can be many reasons for this, but I would surmise a lot of it is to do with hormone imbalances. So first hormone that we're going to talk about is cortisol, our stress hormone. At midlife, we're incredibly stressed. For many of us, we have teenagers or younger kids in the house. We're dealing with older relatives, often at the top of our game when it comes to our career. So we're balanced, we're spinning loads of plates, and literally we keep pushing on, push, how we were in our 20s and our 30s and our early 40s, and suddenly the wheels start to come off. And this stress hormone, cortisol, is directly related to the worry waist, as it's called, or the muffin top, because cortisol basically puts us into this fight or flight mode. And what happens is, after we've had this fight or flight mode, this stress event, this survival event, well, the body can't actually tell that you're sat at your desk getting stressed over work, or sat in a traffic jam, or screaming at your kids. The response is the same. It's redirecting all of our blood glucose into our brain, into our eyes, into our lungs, into our heart, into our muscles. It's priming us to do something physical. However, for a lot of us, we're not doing anything physical. So the body thinks, okay, I'm going to be really, really clever, and I'm going to put this blood glucose, which I haven't used, back into fat near to the liver, where it can be converted again when this body gets stressed, which won't be too long, because this body is very, very stressed. So what happens is this is why we get the worry waist. And the worry waist can happen at any time of life. And the way I approach weight loss for people with this worry waist is we have to trick the body into not being stressed anymore. Okay, and this is why I can't bear the diet industry, because however much calorie restriction you are taking, however much deprivation you're feeding, however much cardio you are doing, this weight around the middle will not go unless you allow the body not to feel like it's in fight or flight mode. So one of the key ways, obviously I can't do anything about your external stress, sorry about that, but I can help your internal stress. And this is when we come to hormone number 2 within the hormone imbalance section. Number 2 is insulin, our storage hormone. So the older we get, the more insulin, our insulin sensitivity reduces. So if you're feeling like you're getting hangry, if you're feeling a different person after eating, if you have a tendency to feel clammy or faint and have that tendency to, I need to eat now, these are all signs of low blood sugar. And this can often happen towards around our cycle as well, where our blood sugar handling goes out of whack. Estrogen has so many roles in the body, and at perimenopause, it's not working so well with insulin as it should be. Also, with insulin, it's our storage hormone. And unfortunately, we are eating constantly. We're often preempting hunger. So our storage hormone is constantly high. And as soon as you have insulin, that switches off your fat burning hormone, which is glucagon, and other hormones, I would say, as well. But if you are in storage mode, you are not going to be in fat burning mode. And this is when eating like our ancestors really comes into play. And I don't mean paleo diet, don't like diets, but it's about fasting. It's about helping our insulin get back to resting levels. And this is why overnight fasting for at least 12 to 14 hours, if you can, if not more, really helps with insulin sensitivity. Movement, fasting movement, so training first thing in the morning or walking or whatever you do that you find enjoyable, do it fasting. And then what happens is that the body starts to draw down on fat stores as opposed to using up, glucose that you've taken on from food, which is stored in your sort of liver and your muscles. So we want to get to that fat burning. But the problem is with this sort of brown fat around the middle is that it is very, very sensitive to cortisol. So if you have these highs and lows of blood sugar, those lows where you're more likely to feel like you need to eat and you're going to eat anything just to bring your blood sugar back up, this is actually causing a really strong need to refuel. So this brown fat isn't inert like the fat that we get on our arms or on our bottom or on our hips. This is where we're supposed to store fat. Whereas this brown fat, not only is it very sensitive to cortisol, it's extremely, it starts to sort of produce its own estrogen. And this is the problem at midlife with this worry waste. So aside from perimenopause, if you have this worry waste, well, then it is a cortisol, it is an insulin issue. But at perimenopause, it becomes an estrogen issue because in light of falling levels, our body starts to hold on to this central fat because it thinks it needs to, because it's creating its own estrogen. And I would say that this estrogen coming from this central fat is the naughty kind of estrogen. It's the more aggressive forms of estrogen, which aren't very helpful. So this is another reason to really, focus in on helping the body release this central fat. Because on top of this, so third hormone, so we've had cortisol, insulin, and now we come on to estrogen. So if you can remember back to being on the pill, often weight gain came with being on the pill because the pill had estrogen in it. It's the same with HRT. So if you're on HRT, and as I say, I'm very much a complementary practitioner, work a lot with women on HRT. Complementary therapy works very nicely alongside HRT. But the problem with HRT for a lot of women is that you put on weight. And the reason being is that estrogen is created in when we get pregnant, estrogen actually helps us to store more fat around the sort of pelvic area, around our hip area, to help with stores of energy for pregnancy. So that is the link there. And as I say, estrogen, we live in a sea of estrogen as well, so we're very estrogen dominant a lot of the time. And don't forget, for anyone in perimenopause that has normal cycles, normal as in sort of 28 to 30 days, you're still very much ovulating. And actually at this first stage of perimenopause, your estrogen can be spiking massively, which then affects progesterone, which is why anxiety, depression can often be those first signs of perimenopause, even though your cycle is still quite normal. This is why suddenly we get this weight gain at this stage of perimenopause, whereas second stage of perimenopause is more when our cycles are, extending out, getting much longer. And actually this is when we get more symptoms of low estrogen, which are the sort of the hot sweats, the night sweats, the hot flushes, things like that. So estrogen, another issue. Thyroid, fourth hormone. This is why when I do programs for men versus women, men lose weight like that because they're more anabolic, they have a lot more testosterone, but they don't have these kind of dances of hormones going on every single month that we do, which kind of affects us. So if you are very stressed, if your cortisol is through the roof, your adrenals and your thyroid work synergistically together. And if one of them, if the adrenals are working very hard, that will actually down-regulate your thyroid, because the adrenals cannot deal with a higher metabolic rate. So it starts to affect the thyroid by down-regulating it. The cortisol actually down-regulates the liver as well. So actually the liver is the site of where we convert the active form of thyroid from T4 to T3 in the liver. So if the liver is down-regulated because too much stress, your thyroid is going to go down. So for me, with my weight loss programs, it's all about flooding the body with micronutrients and the thyroid and the adrenals to wake them both up so they start to work well together. So on top of that, so we have our 4 hormones. Okay, roadblock number 2 is inflammation. And unfortunately, cortisol is very much indicated here, because cortisol, unfortunately, not only is our stress hormone, but it's also our natural anti-inflammatory. So if you have a lot of inflammation going on, if you are bloated, if you get wind, if you get an urgency to go to the loo, often inflammation manifests in the gut. If you have eczema, psoriasis, rosacea, arthritis, osteoarthritis, anything like that, that's all inflammation. But as I say, you can still have this kind of stomach inflammation. And within this sort of inflammation, this is where I deal with food sensitivities, food intolerances. So stress down-regulates our digestive function. So our gut barrier isn't as well, it becomes leaky. So all of that sort of bloating is a sign that your mucosal lining within your gut is inflamed. So unfortunately, the more inflammation we have, the more cortisol we have, the more fat around the middle we have. So they're all interlinked. Unfortunately, nutrition isn't very linear. So these are all factors that all come into play. And then we have the third roadblock, which is this dopamine reward system. And this emotional eating, this preempting hunger. So this is what I work on a lot with patients, is to help to feed dopamine, but to get rid of those unhelpful cues that we often get. And emotional eating isn't the same as physical hunger. Emotional eating doesn't matter if you're hungry or not, can happen anytime. It's all often can be deep rooted in sort of childhood. If you fell over, or you got some sweets, or when I have boarding school patients, I had one yesterday. That sort of tuck, that food is love, that sort of very deep rooted association with sugar and how fluffy and how it makes you feel, and that's your dopamine and your insulin that sugar gives you, that makes you feel fluffy and gives you the reward. So the more that the brain feels, oh my God, that's a really nice feeling, the more it's taking it. And we live in a very dopamine world. It's all about immediacy and turbocharged and rewards, personal, internal rewards. It's not so much about community, which is much more about serotonin, the other neurotransmitter, or one of the other neurotransmitters. So helping to rewire that emotional eating is really important part of a weight loss program for some people. And that's why doing a cleanse can really help to increase variety. So dopamine is also really stimulated by variety in foods. And for a lot of us, we're eating a very, very restricted diet, or very repetitive diet. So as I say, those are sort of the 3 sort of main roadblocks to weight loss. And I would say that there's that is the reason why for a lot of us we struggle. And that's why I find the diet industry so frustrating, that set us up to feel deprived and, depressed when we're still craving sweet food. Our palate has changed massively. We don't have that bitter taste anymore. We don't have sour taste anymore. We just have sweet or salty. And obviously this driving of this insulin, which is stopping us from fat burning. For a lot of us, we are really sort of hanging off our hormones, really. So by doing a sort of a cleanse, I have a 2-week cleanse that helps to rewire you. So we're talking about flooding the body with micronutrients, helping to support the thyroid, support the adrenal glands, but also helping to feed the brain and the second brain, which is the guts, to help reduce inflammation, to help reduce cortisol, which then helps the body release this central weight. And actually, often the weight loss in my weight loss programs is a nice side effect, because suddenly we feel like our skin is better, our digestion is better, our energy is better, our sleep is better, and then the weight just, it disappears. Anyway, so these are things to think about. As I say, some roadblocks might be more relevant to you than others. But they are all things to think about. And I would definitely say that at perimenopause, estrogen really does come into play here. And the effects of estrogen are far reaching. So that's just to be mindful. And with estrogen, the estrogen clearing diet, which is basically my cleanse, helps to get rid of excess estrogens. So if you're getting that central weight, we want to be making sure we're getting rid of the sort of the bad or the not so helpful estrogen through the liver and through the gut. If you're constipated, that estrogen is not going to be getting out. These are some pointers. If you've got any questions, do put them on the chat. Always happy to answer questions. And I shall see you next week. I hope that was helpful. Thanks for joining.